Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. Oh, no.
Amateur Traveler episode 768. Today the Amateur Traveler talks about mountains and waterfalls, street art and lobster rolls, pumpkin races and fall colors as we go to New Hampshire.
I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Let's talk about New Hampshire. I'd like to welcome to the show Cathy Merrifield from nothingbutnewengland.com and roarloud.net, who has come to talk to us about New Hampshire. Cathy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And this is a significant milestone, and Cathy knows this. This will be the 50th state we've talked about. So I appreciate,
Woohoo!
Cathy, you coming on and talking about your state. What is your connection with New Hampshire?
I actually live in New Hampshire and have for probably over 25 years now. Southern New Hampshire is home right now, but we are looking for a place further up north because we love being close to the mountains.
Excellent. Well, and one would assume that nothingbutnewengland.com also covers New Hampshire.
It does.
Excellent. And why should someone go to New Hampshire? Not just because it's the last state to be covered on Amateur Traveler, I'm sure.
Save the best for last, right?
Right.
So yeah, New Hampshire has a little bit of everything. We have some really nice cities like Portsmouth and Concord. You can get some great restaurants. We have seacoast as well, so you have some great seafood and some beaches along there.
You have a little bit of seacoast.
Yeah, a real small bit of seacoast, definitely. Maine is taken over with the seacoast, definitely. My favorite and Frank's favorite is definitely the White Mountains of New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
And for us in New Hampshire, we can drive an hour and be at the seacoast, or we could drive an hour to 2 hours and be up in the mountains. And there's 4,000-foot mountains or higher in just New Hampshire.
Excellent. And my boss for my day job actually just got back from hiking Mount Washington.
Oh,
So
nice. That's the highest one.
that is the highest one, yeah. Excellent. Well, what kind of itinerary are you going to recommend for someone who is coming to New Hampshire, let's say for the first time?
So I have a couple actually. I have one more for the nature lovers and
Okay.
people who like kayak, hike, or at least see mountains. And that brings you all the way up to the top of New Hampshire, which borders Canada.
Hmm.
And ideally, you see some moose on that type of trip, and I can go over that. And then there are some other smaller trips that either bring you out to Portsmouth and the seacoast. The ride along the coast is really nice. It brings you into Maine real fast, but that's still good. And there's a few different towns in between that kind of those must-sees.
Okay. Well, shall we start with the first one then, with the outdoors?
Absolutely. So if you start in southern New Hampshire or anywhere else in New Hampshire and you head north, you can visit Flume Gorge. It's New Hampshire State Park. They have tours, they have walking trails. It's much more walking friendly than some of the other trails that have boulders, boardwalks, and railings and all that fun stuff. You can either go and visit a small bit of it for free, or you can actually go in and get admission and visit more of it.
Okay. Now, where you say when we start there, we're probably starting somewhere further south. You've already taken us almost 2/3 of the way up the state to Flume Gorge, just to put
Yeah.
people on the map. Okay.
To me, that's where all the beauty starts, is once you get up into the White Mountains.
I have been in southern New Hampshire. It ain't no slacker either.
Yeah, we'll get into some of the nice stuff in southern New Hampshire,
Okay.
but having lived around this area and in Massachusetts, I definitely prefer the air up north is just fresher, clean, and you have all these beautiful lakes to kayak and you have mountain views everywhere. So once you're there, it's beautiful to me and to lots of people here in New Hampshire.
Well, and Flume Gorge is someplace we're going to go if we like to hike, is my impression.
Hike or visit waterfalls, and some of those
Okay.
waterfalls are only about a 5-minute walk from the car, so you don't have to be like an avid hiker to see Flume Gorge.
Okay.
In that area, there's also Cannon Mountain, which if it's winter, which nobody really comes up here in winter unless you really love the snow and the cold, there's skiing. But during foliage time, which is the time most people love to come to visit New Hampshire, you can take a sky ride up to the summit of Cannon. So no hiking involved, but you still get those over 4,000-foot views and lots of great foliage.
Well, and you say during foliage time, and you're right. Obviously, that's when a lot of people are going to go or should go. That's certainly the more popular time. But when is that time where you are in New Hampshire? Because you're kind of in southern Canada there. It's going to come sooner.
Yeah, so it varies across the state. There's
Sure.
always foliage maps every year. I always recommend people look those up because it does change depending on how cold the season is, how much rain there is, and all of that. But usually, second week in October is pretty prime season.
Okay.
So there are tons of hikes in New Hampshire. Obviously, there's the 48 4,000-foot mountains. They start at 4,000 and they go all the way up to over 6,000 feet, all different levels of how hard they are. But then there's a lot of mountains that are just real quick hikes, some of them only about half an hour, and you feel like you're up there a lot higher than you are. Great views. We have a lot of different articles all about our favorite hikes in New England. It's just endless. I've been hiking for years and I haven't even done probably half of them.
Well, if you were to pick 2 or 3 from New Hampshire that are your favorite hikes, what would we be including?
Actually, it's Liberty and Flume, so it's right near Flume Gorge, and it's a loop hike. It is one of the most popular. I don't usually recommend it on a weekend because you will have a crowd in the parking lot
Got it.
and even up on the ridge, but it is one of the most spectacular ridges ever. You kind of feel like you're in Lord of the Rings or something like that. It seems like there's drop-offs real sharp at both sides. You're just walking on the ridge between the two mountains, and it's a spectacular hike. One of my favorites that isn't a 4,000-footer is Morgan and Percival. It's another fun loop. I obviously like loops the best. I don't like doing the out and backs as much as doing a loop and seeing something new. But that's a shorter hike, not 4,000 footers, but it has some ladders and some caves in it. So a lot of interesting features. And come foliage time, you get great views of not only the foliage, but the lakes region.
And you say the Lakes region, and
I have been to New Hampshire, but I don't know where the Lakes region is.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big region. There's Gilmington, Wolfboro. It's kind of around Winnipesaukee area.
Okay.
That's the biggest one, but there's tons of small lakes all around that. So if you're into kayaking or fishing or canoeing, it's just endless the places that you can go.
Excellent. One thing that I have to ask, because this is an article I did not expect to find on your site, you have listed your least favorite hike, the worst hike in New Hampshire. Most people don't do that.
Yeah,
Are we having a bad day?
it's funny. When we're hiking, I come up with a lot of different hiking ideas,
Yeah.
a lot of different article ideas. You're out there and you're working hard to get up a mountain, it clears your brain. We knew we wanted to do our best hike, our favorite hike, and the most popular hike in New Hampshire as well. And it was interesting to look all of that up and kind of figure out what everyone's favorite was. But most people have done all the 4,000 footers, usually agree that Owl's Head is the worst hike ever. And I knew it would bring up a lot of conversations. There are a few people that love that mountain. I'm not really sure why. I will say any day in the mountains is not a bad day. I prefer not to hike that mountain again. I've done it twice, and I don't want to do it a third time.
So it is a tiring hike with not a lot to see. Would that be?
The nature is beautiful, but you have to cross a river like just endless times, it feels like. And if it's rained a lot, it can get up to your waist. And New Hampshire water is not warm. That's very treacherous and also a little chilling. And then you get up to the summit and there are no views, and it's kind of a big tumbled mess up at the top. All these little trails of people wandering around trying to look for views and realizing there is no views.
So we're not recommending that one. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, no. I think everyone does it who wants to finish the list of 48 4,000 footers,
Got it.
but not many people just do it for fun.
Well, and you mentioned the lakes, and you've hit a soft spot in my heart because I sailed for the first time. I want to say I learned to sail, but that would imply that there was some lasting learning that happened. But I sailed for the first time on a sailboat on Lake Newbanoosuc in New Hampshire, down near Peterborough when I was a teenager.
I have not visited that one yet.
It's a little one. It's not as big as Winnipesaukee.
Yeah, those are the ones we normally hit because we kayak more than anything else in terms of boating and being on the water. We like getting up close to the herons, seeing the wildlife along the shore, and just having peace and quiet. One of our favorites is Grafton Pond in Grafton, New Hampshire.
Okay.
And you can see loons there. Many times we've seen the baby loons with their parents, and it's just amazing. And they don't allow any motorized boats. So that's why you get that peace and quiet.
Got it. Excellent. Where to next?
So if you are heading up past Flume Gorge, maybe you've done a 4,000-foot mountain or you went over to Morgan and Percival, you keep going north. And you can hit a whole bunch more 4,000 footers. You can stop at Mountain View Grand, one of our favorite places to stay. If you're staying there, they have a great farm right next to their hotel, and they have the friendliest farm animals I've ever met. I try to visit Henry the goat every year. He is super cute and knows his name. He's my personal favorite. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of animals there. We have stayed there many times when we're up there either hiking or skiing or just getaway weekend. And after you go through, that's in Whitefield, New Hampshire. We just kept going north one summer because Frank was working on his 4,000-foot mountain, so we hit as many as we could. We camped and we stayed at some hotels. You can go all the way up to Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, which is at the border of Canada, and Moose Alley is there. We really didn't have super good luck with moose sighting when we were there, to be honest. It was a little disappointing. I've heard that the moose population sadly has gone down quite a bit over the years due to the change in climate and unfortunately lots and lots of ticks, which we do have here in New Hampshire. But yeah, we went up there to partially see moose and to kayak. Great kayaking, great hiking up there. Lots of nice cabins to stay in. Wintertime, if you're into snowmobiling, they have some amazing trails up there.
And they have more moose than people, they say.
That's what they say. I don't really believe it from our trip. We've seen more moose over by Highland Center down in the White Mountains.
Okay.
That's been our prime moose area, is driving around that area. All these spots up in the Whites, most of them have moose tours too. And we've been to moose tours in Maine, not in New Hampshire yet, but moose tours are a great way to get out there. They know all their hiding spots, all the swamps they go to, all the spots they're at dusk and dawn. You go out on a tour and you're pretty much guaranteed to see a moose.
Excellent. I have seen very few moose in the wild, and I always have trouble with the plural of moose, but
I think it's just moose.
I think it is just moose, but it never sounds right.
Yeah, so for those that aren't really into all these mountains and kayaking and all the great things in the Whites, there's also other spots in the White Mountains like North Conway that has tons of outlets, lots of shopping, restaurants, tons of different hotels to stay at. They have those themed roomed hotels that everything is a different theme.
And what kind of themes are we talking about here?
I think they have like a jungle theme and like wildlife, interesting places to stay of every different variety. You can go real high end and luxury to super casual and camping.
Got it. Excellent. What else do we want to do on our outdoor itinerary here?
That really covers all the way up through the White Mountains.
Okay.
Fishing, kayaking, canoeing, moose tours, hiking, exploring waterfalls. A lot of the waterfalls you can see right from the car, which is nice. And some of them are only about a 5-minute walk, too. Not all of them are long. The longer you walk, the more quiet it gets, though. So I always highly recommend pushing yourself a little bit to get further into the woods.
Well, the one of the White Mountains that we only mentioned in passing was the one that my boss just climbed, Mount Washington, which I think many people who are listeners to the show who aren't familiar with New Hampshire might be surprised that this is some of the most extreme weather in the U.S.
Yeah.
Even though we're not as tall as the Rockies, it's not 14,000 feet, it's 6,000 feet, but it's something that anybody can do, but you need to take it seriously. Would that be fair to say?
I would do some caveats on that.
Anything that anybody can do. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely...
Well, there's a cog railway, too, so anybody can do the cog railway. How's that?
Yep, definitely. You can do the cog if you're not up to hiking it, and there is also an auto road, so if you have your car, or you can they have a little bus thing, and sometimes you get hikers that can make it up, and then they just decide, okay, I'm done, and they take something back down versus hiking back down.
My wife grew up in Long Island in New York, and they did a youth trip when she was a teenager up to climb Mount Washington, and she said she was not impressed when she would see all the cars that had their bumper stickers, "This car climbed Mount Washington." She was like, big deal, I climbed Mount Washington. That was a lot harder than driving up, but...
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's pretty rough on the car on the way down because you can really ruin your brakes if you're not being careful. And there's some pretty sharp turns and drop-offs that make it a little bit sketchy when you're driving yourself up there. But definitely hiking it is a force to be reckoned. Even in the summertime, there can be snow and really crazy weather. So it can be a very deceivingly dangerous hike. You start out at the bottom with great summer weather, you get up to the top, and it's nearly winter conditions. And if you're not prepared, it can be really dangerous.
Well, and the Mount Washington Observatory on the top of the mountain still holds the record for wind speed. Is the U.S. or is it in the world? I'm not sure. It's of 231 mile an hour winds were seen at the summit, which that's you don't want to be up there then, let's just say.
No, yeah.
So pay attention to any winter warnings while you're there.
Yeah, if you are a winter hiker and prepared for that and do hike it in the wintertime, you can get some really severe weather. It is gorgeous and super beautiful because all the cars aren't going up there then, so you don't have the pile of tourists up there. It can be really dangerous, and I've seen the videos of them facing those winds, the guys that are staying up there. You can just lean right into it and you're not going anywhere.
Ah, bon chien. Bonjour, je suis Theo, a tour leader with Explore. And this is Punti. He's helping us find truffles under the trees next to this beautiful vineyard. Maybe for tomorrow's cooking class? We call it semi-heure. Parfait. Semi-o'clock. Not everyone gets to enjoy a Bordeaux sunset this way, but you will if you explore. No, Punti. Search exploreworldwide.com and don't just travel. Explore.
These are violent criminals, so they're not going to go down easy.
ABC Tuesdays.
Let's get this done.
The Rookie is back.
We have 2 new rookies starting today.
Howdy.
Being a cop is stressful 24/7. Every year on the job is different.
And Training Day
We have a serial killer at large.
never ends.
We need an ambulance!
The Rookie. All new Tuesdays on ABC and stream on Hulu.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Excellent. So we've done outdoors. So now we're going to go get our hot chocolate. We're going to go inside. What are we going to do?
So more southern New Hampshire, which you might have been to, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It's along the seacoast, but it's much further southern.
The extensive seacoast of New Hampshire, you're saying?
Oh, yeah.
So how much seacoast does it have? I don't remember.
It's a real small amount. There's a limited amount of beaches. You can count them probably on one hand.
So New Hampshire went for quality, not quantity, is what you're saying.
Yeah, the seacoast is definitely small. I think most people from New Hampshire probably head to Maine or Massachusetts for their beaches. The few beaches we do have are very nice. We head over to Rye. There's great lobster rolls along there and some really good surfing, too, if you're into that.
And the answer, by the way, apparently is 18 miles of seacoast. So
Wow, see, that's a ton, right?
yeah, I don't need 18 miles. I don't take that much room. A mile-long beach feels like plenty of space. So, but yeah, Portsmouth is a beautiful, beautiful town.
Oh, yeah, it is. You have all the older buildings mixed in with some new. You have excellent restaurant scene there. One of my personal favorites is there's lots of great street art as well. You can go get live entertainment, eclectic dining, anything from street food to a crazy place called Friendly Toast, which has like really unique decorations. All the staff tend to be unique.
Okay. Is it a breakfast restaurant with a name like Friendly Toast, or are we talking about a toast like to raise your glasses?
Yeah, more breakfast. So it's breakfast all day, and then they do have lunch and dinner menu too, but a lot of people go in for breakfast all day.
Okay. And you said an extensive scene, and you gave us one restaurant. Do you have any other favorites in Portsmouth?
Oh, absolutely. I did a lobster roll tour last year.
A lobster roll tour. So a whole tour where you did nothing but lobster rolls.
Yeah, I ate a lot of lobster rolls that summer.
Okay.
I actually got lobstered out, which for me is amazing because I have eaten 6 lobsters in a sitting on a tour. So
good grief. Okay.
Popovers on the Square is in Portsmouth, right in downtown, and they do have special little lobster rolls in Popovers, but they have a non-seafood menu as well for those that actually don't love seafood.
Got it.
And Friendly Toast, as I mentioned, Row 34 was one of those that we absolutely loved their lobster roll. Super fresh, great roll. It earned top marks from us.
Well, and I think people are familiar with the lobster roll. We're talking a lobster sandwich.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's big debate in New England because true New England lobster roll is cold with mayonnaise.
Okay.
I actually prefer it the way they say is more Connecticut, which is hot buttered.
Okay. I didn't realize there was a regional difference there.
Oh, yeah. People will debate and say the hot buttered isn't a real lobster roll, but I love it. A lot of places are starting to serve it.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to love what you
Yeah.
eat.
Don't tell me something's traditional. Tell me it's delicious. So
Exactly.
excellent. What else are we doing in Portsmouth while we're there?
My favorite thing, which actually we had mentioned Samantha Brown before we started this, she had said on one of the talks that I heard, always just go out and take a walk. Like, have no exact game plan, kind of get lost a little bit, explore. And that's one of the really fun things to do in Portsmouth, because you'll find a small little bakery down a side street. You'll find a crystal store, and just go in everywhere. Really explore. You can find some hidden street art, and you might find your favorite lobster roll.
All right, then. Where else are we going to tell people to go in New Hampshire?
Another place we love is Rye Beach, and that whole area, not only because they have great lobster rolls, but they have a few beautiful beaches like Genesis. Some of them are only for residents, unfortunately, so it's real tough to find parking. But there are ones that have public parking. And right in that area is Odiarn Point, which has some old forts that you can walk around, some trails that lead you out to beaches and along the coast. And also they have a museum there, which is really neat to go in, and you can see some sea life in there, touch stuff if you're into that, which I love.
And this is part of the state park there?
Yeah.
Okay. And you say forts, they look to me from the pictures I'm seeing like Civil War era forts.
Yeah, I think so. I don't actually know the time frame. To be honest, I like the street art and graffiti all over them the most versus the history behind
and we'll
it.
get into this later, but Cathy has a street art site that is just about street art, so we'll mention that as we get to the end here.
Yeah, if you're in that area, Rye Lobster Pound and the Beach Plum are two of our favorites for seafood, especially lobster rolls. Beach Plum also has 78 flavors of ice cream, so you can't really go wrong there.
Beach plum?
Yep, the Beach Plum.
Okay. Is there such a thing as a beach plum?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think it might. I wonder if it refers to, like, those beach roses.
It's a native species, a plum native to the East Coast.
Oh. Learn something new every day.
And a place I can get ice cream, which is possibly even more important.
Definitely.
Anything else we want to do while we're in Rye?
Those are some of our favorites. I know if you're staying in that area, Wentworth by the Sea is a beautiful place to stay. You get some ocean views and some nice history to that hotel as well.
Got it. And are there other places you want to peg on our sort of week to 2 week itinerary? I think we add in this, we're going into 2 week territory, right?
Yeah, there are definitely some side notes that if you're in the area or looking for a little bit more to do, we really love Concord, New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. There's shopping there, some really cool restaurants, like Margarita's is one of them. You can eat in an old jail cell. Can't do that every day, right?
Not if you behave.
Even like the local sandwich shop there called The Works is one of my absolute all-time favorites. So anytime we're heading back from up north, it's always like, well, let's just stop and get a sandwich.
Got it. Well, and you mentioned street art. We should mention your street art site, which is?
streetartchat.com.
There. Oh, sorry. I say your site. You do a weekly chat on Twitter about street art. Sorry.
Yeah. That actually is on hold right now.
Okay.
Just because Twitter it kind of slowed down through COVID, kind of started focusing on some other things for a while. So that's temporarily on hold.
Got it. But if we asked you your favorite street art in New Hampshire, have you covered it already, or is there something else we need to add?
I think in New Hampshire, Concord has a pretty good street art scene. Portsmouth is probably a little bit better, but both of them you can find some really nice art.
Got it. Excellent. Anything else before we start to wrap this up? Anything else people need to know before they head to New Hampshire? So your favorite time of year to go, we've talked about going in the fall.
Yep.
We've also talked about snowmobiling. When would you suggest people go? We know when they'd normally go. But what's the best time?
I think fall is the best time. It is my favorite. It is spectacular when the foliage is peak. It is, some years it's less striking than others, but it's always beautiful. Even though I'm a New Englander for life, born and raised here, I'm still amazed when I go to a mountaintop and I see the foliage. I mean, it looks like a painting. I just sit there with my jaw dropping and saying, this can't be real. There's just so many different colors and hues, and the weather's perfect too. It's not so hot as the summer. It's not freezing like the winter. So it's really the best of everything to me.
Well, and I am told that I talk about California too much, and I love the weather out here. But the one season that I miss from that area, because I went to school in upstate New York, right near Vermont, is the fall. I mean, the falls are prettier there. Let's face it.
Yeah, we know how to do fall, definitely. And then you have apple cider donuts that come out, really great Honeycrisp apples. I mean, it just doesn't get better. You can grab some apples and donuts, go up to a summit, and look at foliage. I mean, that's a perfect day right there.
One particular day of the year or festival that you really ought to be in New Hampshire for?
One of my favorite festivals is actually a real small one. It's in Goffstown, New Hampshire, and it's a pumpkin festival.
Okay.
And they do a race inside giant pumpkins down the river. They carve out giant pumpkins and people race down the river. It's quite the scene.
The giant pumpkin regatta. Well, there you go.
They were nice enough to let me sit in one once. I have a pretty funny photo and video because I was really excited that they let me do this. Made my day. Lots of cider donuts, little food trucks and things like that. They have
That's
a nice
hilarious.
bakery there. Down an alley, they actually have street art in this little small New Hampshire town. I mean, it has a little bit of everything.
Funny. Excellent. Are we ready for some of our wrap-up questions then?
Sure.
Here's the hard one. You were standing in the prettiest spot in New Hampshire. Where are you standing and what are you looking at?
Definitely remembering last year's foliage time. So it was peak foliage, probably about the second week in October. We did a real short hike, and it's called the Sugar Loaves.
Okay.
And you have views of 4,000 footers around you. You feel like you've done a real big hike, but you've probably only gone up maybe 2 hours, and it's not particularly hard. And we just had a literal painting in front of us. That's when I say nature is the best artist.
Excellent. And that is near where?
I would have to look that one up. I don't even know what town that's in.
Well, it looks like the Sugar Loaves are about 2/3 up the state in kind of the middle, halfway across. So a little further south, but towards the northern end of the White Mountain National Forest. Excellent.
Yeah.
And one thing that makes you laugh and say only in New Hampshire, but you can't use pumpkin boats because you already used them.
I think loons, actually.
Okay.
When we were on Grafton Pond kayaking, we saw a loon that, of course, I had to say he was a loony loon. He was just a little bit crazy about cleaning himself. I don't know if he was obsessive compulsive or what it was, but they definitely have some really funny, quirky behaviors at times.
Got it. You mentioned loons in New Hampshire. We should mention that if I'm of an age that you say loons, and I think of the movie On Golden Pond, which was filmed in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
It was filmed on Squam Lake, if I'm looking at it correctly.
Oh, God, such a beautiful area. We have camped on Moon Island. Close to impossible to get reservations. It's booked usually all year long, but that was one of our absolute favorite camping trips. We walked around this small island and came across a deer in the middle of the woods that I guess swam out there. Yeah, super quiet, really relaxing. You hear the loons on there as you're kayaking out to the island. They pop up next to you and then they swim back off, and beautiful place.
And if you are less than 30 years old when that movie came out, or maybe less than 40 years old, you can get it on Netflix. So On Golden Pond is a award-winning movie and a pretty sweet movie and features the beautiful scenery of New Hampshire. So, final question. If you had to summarize New Hampshire in just 3 words, what 3 words are you going to use?
You ask all the really tough questions, Chris.
So, if you'd listened to the whole episode of the other ones,
I know,
these are standard questions.
Definitely nature.
Okay.
I'm kind of obsessed with lobster, so I always think lobster, but Maine's really much more known for lobster.
Okay.
I'm going to cheat. I'm going to call a friend in on this. 3 words that describe New Hampshire, Frank. He's going to say moose.
Using the phone a friend.
Yep. Yeah, diversity. It is a very diverse state where we have bustling cities, and then you can't even see a road from some of the mountains in New Hampshire.
Okay.
So moose, diversity, and nature.
Excellent. And Cathy Merrifield, if we wanted to send people to the best post in New Hampshire, we're going to send them to nothingbutnewengland.com because roarloud.net is international travel. But where are we going to send them?
The best place to send them would be Best Foliage in New Hampshire.
Ah, okay.
That goes over some of our favorite spots to hike and see foliage, and really how to find some kind of local stuff that doesn't even involve any hiking. Because if you're in New Hampshire in October, you're going to see great foliage just going down the road.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Our guest again has been Cathy Merrifield. Cathy, thank you so much for coming on Amateur Traveler and sharing with us your love for New Hampshire.
Thank you very much.
One correction to the show. When we were talking about Odiorn State Park, I said it looked like the fort there was a Civil War fort. There have, in fact, been forts there since the Revolutionary War, but I think most of the structures that Cathy was talking about were from coastal defenses from World War II, just to save myself a few emails.
Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. The app is simple. Pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Download the Prize Picks Daily Fantasy Sports app today and use code FIELD and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FIELD on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
I'd like to thank the Patreon supporters of the show who help support the show financially. They get the show a little earlier, and we get to have those lovely monthly Zoom calls, which we just had Saturday, and which I always quite enjoy. If you would also like to support the show, go to patreon.com/amateurtraveler. Speaking of supporters of the show, Jeff Ulfs wrote and said about the episode we did on Cleveland, I was a guest speaker at James Garfield National Historic Site, which is east of town in Mentor. In Mentor, I have to give a shout out to the Best Western Lawnfield Inn and Suites, one of the nicest Best Westerns I've ever stayed at, and their restaurant serves fresh Faroe Island trout. Continuing with national park areas, First Ladies National Historic Site is down by Akron, and Perry's Victory International Peace National Memorial, Put-in Bay is the Key West of the North, is out by Sandusky. My favorite hot dog restaurant is Happy Dogs in Cleveland. Thanks so much, Jeff. I heard from Steve on the episode I did about my Windstar cruise in the Caribbean. Steve said, I really enjoyed your report on the Star Breeze. It was very informative. We can't wait to travel again. I really agree with your caution for sailing on a bigger ship. My wife and I prefer ships that carry 700 people or less. Better itineraries. The only time we take bigger ships is if we can't find an itinerary. An example is a 1-month cruise around Australia. A concern I have concerns medical services in foreign cities. We have been on a cruise where someone gets so sick they must be taken off the ship to a hospital on shore. With so many medical hospitals struggling to service people with COVID-19, I'm concerned that I might get sick on board and then not be able to get medical service on shore and or a medical flight back home. Note, I always purchase travel insurance that covers foreign medical facilities and medical flights home. Any thoughts or information? Keep up the great podcasts. And I wrote back to Steve. I said, with
cruises right now, most of the places that healthcare systems are overrun really aren't allowing cruise ships. That's pretty much the first thing that you do, for instance, if you've got a problem with the COVID numbers. So, for example, on our cruise, when BVI, the British Virgin Islands, numbers went up, they closed their ports. And granted, things can change, but neither the cruise companies nor the countries want to see those things happen right now. So they're trying to be very careful, and that's why they did the bubble tours and such that we talked about on that episode. So it's certainly, something to think about, and the kind of insurance that Steve is carrying is something that would help with that. It's probably not my biggest concern right now. And partially that's because I'm vaccinated. And so I know that the statistics are that if I get sick with COVID-19, it's probably going to be a milder case. I'm hoping that's the case for most of you as well. Those are my thoughts on the issue. And with that, we're going to end this episode of Amateur Traveler. If you have any questions, send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com, or better yet, leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com. And thanks so much for listening.
See one more cathedral, I got to sit in one more cafe. I know that I should be